Now, a study of baby humpback whales has found an astonishing thing. They whisper to their mothers. Humpbacks, well, they're known for their loud, haunting songs, but scientists who recorded the babies found they uttered intimate grunts and squeaks which could only be heard at close range. Well, with me now to discuss this further is our science correspondent, Helen Briggs. So it's absolutely fascinating, this, Helen. Why do they do that?
It is fascinating, isn't it? And the scientists themselves were really surprised by this, these little quiet squeaks and grunts. But what they think is going on is that these calves can be preyed on by killer whales. They think that by keeping the noise down, they have to stay close to their mothers, but by doing it very, very softly, then they can escape being eavesdropped by killer whales.
So self-preservation.
Self-preservation is definitely going on there, according to the scientists.
So tell me how they found this out. How did they actually do this?
Well, they had little sound recorders and they stuck them onto the skin of the whales using little suction cups. So these stay on for a day or two, and they were actually able to record these noises as the whales swam alongside their mothers and the communication between them. And as I say, it's surprising because we know humpback whales, the adults, make these long, plaintive sounds, whereas the mums and babies have these little intimate grunts, which I think we can hear.
Well, it's really interesting because it was the second chunk that we played was the babies, and we had to really boost it up, and you could only just hear it compared to the first bit we played, which was the adults. So you very clearly hear the difference. And this is interesting, isn't it? Because we don't know a huge amount about whales in the wild, certainly in the early stages of their lives, do we?
Not at this stage, no. So humpback whales are actually favourites of whale watchers, but they could put on these big displays, they leap out of the water, and scientists have studied them a lot. But when they're babies and they're just swimming with their mums, there's really very little information about them, and that's crucial. They're in their nursery waters, they're in warmer waters, and these baby whales have to put on a vast amount of weight and fat stores because they're about to begin their long migration with thousands of miles.
I mean, huge journeys these whales actually have to take when they're still pretty tiny, and information like this becomes crucial when you think of things like conservation and shipping and all those other things that perhaps play into exactly this research.
Yes, it's very important because it shows how crucial quiet waters are at this stage of the whale's life, and shipping can interfere with whales, it can interfere with marine life, so conservationists will be doing more work on this sort of area to preserve their habitat.
Well, Helen, thanks for taking me through all of that. Do stay there because whilst Helen is with me, I want to turn to another fascinating science story, because the science of accurate throwing, whether it's a dart or a crumpled up piece of paper. Now, you've been looking at that, or we're keeping you busy today. You've been looking at that story as well. So there is an optimal scientific way of throwing. Tell me what it is.
Well, it boils down to slow is more accurate generally, but as you can see from the equations, it's actually very complex science behind this. You have to model what happens when you release a projectile, just like a crumpled piece of paper or something like that, and the speed you release it at to come up with these optimal strategies. So if you're just trying to throw a bit of paper into a bin, then you want to do underarm and slow. If you're doing some sort of sport and you want to throw things fast, that's where overhand comes in, overarm, but that can be where things aren't as accurate.
And of course, look at that basketball there, and the same principle applies to darts. I mean, it is interesting because, in a sense, the science has actually caught up with what all of these players are actually doing. We've already worked it out, and science is catching up.
That's right, because humans are sort of teaching themselves to throw. You can see this in kids when they're learning to throw balls. They're just practicing, they're trying to get it right, they practice again, and they work out the best strategy. So with darts, overhand, fast throws. So the professional darts players are doing what the maths tells you they should do. It's not always the case,
And
though.
it's uniquely human, isn't it? The
It
notion of throwing and accurate throwing.
Yeah, I'm told that animals can't throw, but monkeys can apparently throw a bit, but they're really rubbish. But humans obviously evolved this, so what we would have had to be able to throw accurately at one time to catch things to eat. So obviously, if you don't throw right then, you don't eat your dinner, so it must be something uniquely human.
It's amazing looking at this sort of mathematical formula behind me over my shoulder, because that's what it boils down to. That's what the scientists have actually looked at and worked out. I mean, you talked about basketball, and actually when the scientists looked at it, the most accurate throw was the underarm throw, which begs the question, you know, when you have those free throws on the tee, why aren't basketball players doing the underarm throw? They're still doing the overarm one.
Yeah, they found marginally underarm is better, but they think that it's a cultural thing. It's gone out of fashion. It's known as the granny throw.
The granny throw?
The granny throw, and so players have stopped doing it.
So that's presumably why they're just embarrassed at throwing it that way, even though it potentially is more accurate. Well, absolutely fascinating. Helen, thanks for taking us through that and the whale story. Both of them remarkable stories. Thank you very much. Now, still to come on today's programme, we'll be asking the head of this shoe repair company why he uses Mr. Men characters as a guide to hiring new staff.